Hello friends. On this episode of the video newsletter, we're going to consider two questions that were made popular by the author Andy Stanley in his book, How to Be Rich. And the first of those questions was, are you rich? The second of those questions is, are you generous? And the findings in this book were absolutely fascinating. Let me consider the first one, because they surveyed people of many different income levels, and they found that there was an overwhelming correlation that Americans, did not feel rich. And when they would go back and ask them, well, what would it take for you to be rich? They always quoted whatever their income was times 2. So the guy that was making $50,000, do you feel rich? No, not at all. Well, what would it take for you to feel rich? Well, if I were making $100,000, I would feel rich. And the guy making $100,000 would say the guy making $200,000 is rich. And the guy making $200,000 would say that the guy who's making $400,000 was rich. And he compared that to global statistics. And he would respond and say, did you know that if you make over $48,000, then you are in the top 1% of global income earners? So to say that a different way, financially, the difference between you and Bill Gates is smaller than the difference between you and the average person living outside of the US. So it's fascinating that Americans, by and large, don't think they're rich, and yet they overwhelmingly are. And then when you contrast that to the question, are you generous? Americans overwhelmingly think they are generous, and yet the statistics show that that's actually not the case. The average amount of giving as a percentage of adjusted gross income is less than 2% in the United States. And Andy Stanley actually found that as people's income went up, their percentage of giving went down. And you'd think it'd be the opposite. So Americans don't think they're rich, and yet they absolutely are. And Americans, by majority, think they're generous, and they overwhelmingly are not. And I don't say that to guilt or shame anybody. I say that to highlight the research that we've talked about in previous videos, the generosity studies from the University of Notre Dame, where we see this high correlation between giving and happiness, where we see this high correlation between how much we give and the level of satisfaction that people self-report. So as you're considering your end-of-year giving plans, we want to encourage you, be generous. Give appreciated stock. If you're required to take a minimum distribution out of your IRA this year and you don't need it, give that as a qualified charitable deduction, because those are two very strategic ways that you can give money to your church or charity, and you can also benefit yourself from a tax perspective. Please be generous. It's good for you. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.